Hey guys, this is Lil with another raid video. Today we are following on from our HYDRA Beginner's Guide and we are taking a look at how you progress up the difficulties, how you progress, your damage in your keys. So today I thought we would take a look at my free-to-play account, which I've been running for a while, off and on, just because it's been hitting normal and hard for a while, and it's never been able to progress beyond that. And then we pulled some new champs, and so suddenly, that damage was getting better and better. And, you could see where before you were struggling to one key hard, then suddenly you're able to, you bring in a new champ who, in fact, we'll go and we'll talk over the roster. But, suddenly you're able to then do a lot of damage, then you're able to do it on auto, and then suddenly when you're going way over max chest on auto, then you start going, okay, maybe it's time for me to think about stepping up to go on to brutal or to go on to nightmare, whatever it is, wherever you're at. So let's go and take a look at the teams, and I've recorded a run. So sorry, I couldn't find the right one. So this is a recording that I did earlier of a full run on manual. Apologies, just drinking my coffee. So my free-to-play, like I said, was hitting normal and hard. It's doing fine. It was able to one key hard, but that was manual, taking a few attempts each time. And then suddenly a couple of weeks ago we pulled Iron Gut, and suddenly the team goes from can't stay alive and I've got to have both my revivers in here, Uko and Pythion, to suddenly, and not having a consistent taunt, to suddenly you've got a really consistent taunt and you've got much more survivability because of his healing and stuff, and his buffs. So suddenly you go, okay, actually now I'm able to full auto and go way above max chest on hard in this case, but it could be anything else. Okay, am I ready to step up? So thinking about stepping up, I would say the first thing to bear in mind is the respawn on the heads is going to be more random. The lower the difficulty, the more likely the same head will respawn. So that's my first sort of watch out, is take a look at your team and know where your gaps are. So the first thing that I would do is look at my team. And this isn't specifically about my team or the champs, I'm just using that to demonstrate. So here, this team, we've got two damage dealers, so Husk can act as a backup provoke. This Uko isn't in a provoke set, she's just in sets to get the stats, because it's my free-to-play account. The gear is way, way worse. We will go and take a look at the actual gear in a minute. So just using it because it's just a bit more relatable, and it's got exactly the scenario that we're talking about here. What am I missing in this team? I'm missing a mischief tank. There's nobody here that's mischief tanking, so we are likely to get buffs stolen. Newt brings a buff, a unique buff on his A2, so we're going to be turning that off because we can't afford him to, he would be mischief tanking suddenly if he did. I could build him as a mischief tank, but I think that's a waste of him, so I don't want to. I'd much rather survive without. We also don't have, and I just don't have on the account, a way to deal with Torment at all. So I should point out, I did run this team, so I guess knowing where your gaps are, the type of damage dealer that you need to bring. So in normal and hard, like we talked about in the beginner's guide, you can bring more of your regular damage dealers, where those enemy max HP champs are better the higher up the difficulties you go. They do more damage on brutal and nightmare. It depends who you've got. I didn't have anyone better than Husk, so I was using Husk on my hard team. He still did absolutely fine. Last week, full auto on hard, this team did 40 million, so that's great. But then I tried running it on brutal, full auto, and I just ran it in RSL Helper, just left it running for hours. And I think it ran 12 runs and never got, I said stop at maxed out at highest chest in brutal, and it never, 12 runs and it never got near that damage. So I know that this team cannot full auto brutal top chest wonky. But that's why what we're doing is we're dialing it back and we're going, right, when I want to progress up a difficulty, I'm going to have to full manual the run if I want to make that step up. So yeah, knowing your team, knowing your gaps, I would then say go and check your builds and stats. So we'll go and do that now quickly. We should have a game. Yes, we do. Here's my, this is my free-to-play account. So I want to go and check everyone's stats and just see how are they? How are their builds? Are they meeting those thresholds that we need? Yeah, are the supports fast enough? Are they tanky enough? Do they have enough accuracy? And for the most part, I've already done this. Obviously, does my Uko have enough accuracy to land her debuffs on brutal? To which the answer is yes, she's fine there. Her speed is all right. Her defense is a bit low. And I remember this from almost all of these builds. Their defense was a little on the low side. But, free-to-play life is you can't max everything out. The Newt, how is he? And then that's it. And then take a look at the Iron Gut. Again, these are like the champs with some of the best gear on this account because, and we're missing some of the crit rate because, they're some of the best champs I've got on this account. Yep, so here you go. Husk, again, he can be low on the crit damage because he's going to hit that maximum damage 10% threshold, so he doesn't need 240 crit damage if you're bringing decreased defense. Now that's another thing that's missing from this team. I don't have decreased defense, so I could pump his crit damage higher, but I just don't have the gear for it, so I haven't. I can't do Sanddevil, so I don't have any Ascension pots, for example. So let's flip back to the run. Is there anything else we need to check here? No. So your damage dealer type, knowing the gaps in your team. And then just checking your builds, checking your stats. Are they fast enough? Are they tanky enough? Have they got enough accuracy? Have they got enough resist? And we talked about damage dealer types. So let's flip back to the video of the run and we'll go through some highlights from the run. I'm not going to make you sit through a whole full run because that would be mean. So this is my run. Now, for me, get the start right makes a big difference. So I think we're running this slightly fast, so let me just slow it down a little bit. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm rerunning it until I get a proc. So the Necmo here is in provoke set. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting free regroup until I get either a proc from the provoke set or I'm manualing Husk and an A1 into the head of decay blight to get that provoke off. Sorry, it is decay. Yeah, and if I don't get it, then I rerun it. I restart it. It just means that you can just have a nice consistent start where you can save your provoker's provoke for one turn, and that'll just make it easier to cycle back around to it later. In the end, I run this for a while, and I kept it in the recording, and I never landed it, and I even a little ways in actually had a run that was going well, and do you know what? We just kept getting feared because here we've got the fear head, we got no counter to it, and sometimes the fears just land wrong and everything gets everyone gets feared, and this whole run fell apart about 3 minutes in, I think. So we start again, yeah, and that's the reality. Sometimes you just have to start again because it's going so wrong, and I restart this one, and in the end, I think I missed I gave up trying to land the provoke set or the Husk A1, and I just went for it, and actually in the end we got it. So let's talk about some of the things. So getting the start right, for me, it just sets you up. It just sets you up nicely where you're in control of this fight. You can start getting your decreased speeds out and your increased speeds up, so that you are the one who is in control, and you've already got past the sort of those initial skills from HYDRA. So I've got some examples of. I just have a bit more coffee. Okay, so some other things, like we were talking in my clan about sort of video ideas, and progression, like moving up, was something I wanted to do. And one of the things that somebody sort of described, going through a whole run, was situational awareness, and I thought that was a perfect way to describe it. You need to be, and I've just paused it because we're getting to one of the things in a second. You need to be aware of everything that's going on, and this is what you can't do on manual. Is if I look here, I can see the head of decay has a very full turn meter bar, and we haven't got a provoke up. So what I want to do is put a Husk A1 on there, Necmo, try and get a provoke from his provoke set. And I'm looking at, okay, who's got what skills available and what debuffs have we got out and what do we want out. Now, we haven't got block buffs out, so we need to get block buffs up, because otherwise, this head of mischief is going to keep stealing our buffs, and this head of suffering, head of wrath is going to get his increased attack and his block debuffs, and we don't want that. So, you should be... It's not... you're trying to monitor your champ's skills, but you can never monitor all of them perfectly. You'll have an idea when your provoker's provoke is coming off cooldown. But you can see, okay, look, where am I at in this fight? How's everyone doing? How's the survivability? How many fears are out there? You see, and we miss a provoke here. So now this, we're going to get a cleanse going. See, he hasn't got his provoke back. Is Husk going to come around to his A1 in time? Yes, he does. And there we go. So again, I ignore the provoked head. I ignore the decapitated head, because actually staying in control of the fight and avoiding a cleanse, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but, we've got a decreased attack on here, and I don't really want to lose that. We got a few debuffs out, not a whole host, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if you'd got the cleanse off, but you want to stay in control of the fight. You want to keep these leeches, the block buffs, the decreased attacks on. Okay, so we'll jump forward a little bit, and we'll talk to which heads to hit. So, in fact, I'll talk about it now. So, your enemy max HP champs, this is kind of Newt specific, because actually he's the single target AoE, single target max HP. So you can see here, I don't go and hit the decapitated head, because his damage is capped at 10% per hit, and the damage multiplier on a decapitated head isn't going to make any difference. He's never going over 10%. He's not going to get the whatever it is, like quadruple damage or whatever it is from a decapitated head. It's capped, so I may as well hit something else, especially if you've got Hex out, because that'll do a nice load of splash damage as well. I may as well use Newt to start pushing the other heads down, so that I'm targeting, okay, who do I want down next, and that's up to you and your team. Like in this team, I do a lot of focusing Newt's A3 into the head of Torment whenever it's up, because I don't have a way of dealing with the head of Torment. So Newt killing it as quickly as possible is my best way to counter the head of Torment. So let's flip forward a little bit, and we'll talk about me making a mistake here, which is... So I've got, what I do here is I do an A1 on Husk, because I can see that, head of Decay's got a high turn meter and no provoke on, and I'm not sure where my provoker's A3 is. So I put an A1 into it, but Husk has got this block healing, and he's pretty low health, and what happens here inevitably is he dies. And when he dies, see, he didn't have his provoke up anyway. When he dies, that provoke falls off. Yeah, so we're going to get a full cleanse here because we provoked with somebody who was low health, who was about to die, and it's the same for like your devour timer. If the devour timer is on somebody and they're your provoker, don't use their provoke just before they get devoured because it's a waste. It's just going to fall off as soon as they get devoured, or if they're low health, don't put provoke on with them. You should also, and I didn't actually mark an example in the time, keep an eye on how many turns are on your devour timer, because you want to be holding skills at that point. Yeah, in this team I've got 3 damage dealers because Iron Gut. But I might want to hold some of their skills for, okay, I can see that Newt is going to get devoured in 8 turns. I mean, I wouldn't hold it at 8, but, you know, let's say that this was 3 turns. That's 3 Hydra head turns. So you can see where people's turn meter is, yeah? This one's max, this one's next, then this one. So he's going to get devoured over here, yeah, if this was 3 turns. Some of them, it's not a science. Some heads prioritise their skills. I'm sure it's written down somewhere. I've never figured it out which heads prioritise skills over devours. It does happen. So it's not an art. It's not a science. It's an art. You know roughly they're going to get devoured by this one, or it might be the one after that. Yeah. So you can plan it to an extent. It's really useful with someone like if you're using like a Geomancer, because then you can go, okay, I think the devour is going to happen here, I'm going to place my HP burn on. And sometimes it'll happen that you pick the wrong head because that head had a skill available that it prioritises over devouring, and sometimes that's just how it goes. So yeah, check your devours, check their turn meter bars. Obviously, and I didn't get a timestamp of this one, but if you've got a head that you're focusing down and it's getting low on HP, but its turn meter is high, you need to start putting damage somewhere else. And I would say probably do that earlier than you think, especially if you've got Hex, because that splash damage from Hex and those HP burn ticks are gonna knock down a chunk of that HP bar as well. So, you know, delay those. You want to decapitate a head when it's super low health bar, not when it's on a super high health bar, because then you're maximising your uptime. You can do things like, I talked about it before, Head of Mischief will reset the turn meter bar when it dies. So, you know, if you've got a head dead, and full transparency, I had a really good example of this on a run that I did fully manual with this team, only to realise that I would run it on hard by accident. So that's 40 minutes of my life I'm never getting back. But yeah, so you can, if you've got a decapitated head and you've also got Mischief really low, what you want to do is keep hitting that decapitated head and then kill Mischief while it's still decapitated, and then its turn meter will go straight back again and you get even more uptime on those decapitated heads. Whether or not to decapitate lots of heads at once depends on your team. In this team, I do have quite a few. I've got a decent mix of AoE and single target damage. Just have another drink. You know, my Iron Gut is all AoE. My Husk has some good AoE. My Newt is more single target damage. So, having multiple heads dead at the same time is okay for my team. If you're running mainly single target damage dealers, I would try and stagger them. You know, don't kill 2 heads at once. Try and kill 1 head and try not to push too much damage in another head, because then as soon as the other head dies, you can kill another head. And then you've got another decapitated head to focus on. Another thing on this team is I'm using Newt. He's got that self-buff on the A3. So I've turned that off, or I'm not using it. But as soon as the Head of Mischief isn't in the lineup, even if I've got a decapitated head and Mischief isn't on the table, I can use that A3, I can use that A2, and it'll give me a weaken, and some good AoE damage, and it'll give him a counterattack, knowing that I'm probably going to get 2 turns before that head spawns back in and then takes its turn. So even if it did spawn in as Mischief, Newt's probably going to take 2 turns before that head takes a turn, if it's currently decapitated. So, okay, sorry, let's go on to our next example. So, in fact, which is right now. which is another example of doing something wrong. So, yeah, let me just flick that back. Okay, so there we go. The husk dies, the provoke comes off, and I still, and a mistake, I still use the Uko A2 to do the block buffs. Now, the reality, and it's probably me not realising at the time that Husk had died and the provoke was Husk's. The reality is I should have held that skill, because actually there's nothing I can do about this provoke at this point. My neck mode's just got feared, my Husk is dead, the Iron Gut isn't going to get back around to his turn before Decay takes his turn, so like there's nothing we can do to stop this cleanse now. So what I should have done here is start holding skills. As soon as I can see that that's going to happen, I should be holding skills. Yeah, so I should have held that, I should have held this, because what happens, cleanse comes in, they've all gone, and now I've got multiple turns with no block buffs. So let's go for oh, here you go. So this is around here. So here I've got 2 heads decapitated, and none of them is the head of Mischief, so I can safely go ahead and use Newt's A2. Now I've got 2 decapitated, but I know that it's going to be at least 2 turns. You know, they're both decapitated. None of them are coming back soon, so even if one of them did spawn in, he would take 2 turns before that happens. And if we jump forward a tiny bit more, so what I did there was I held the A2 on Uko. Just, there's 2 heads out, there's nothing that I need to block buffs on either of these heads, so I just held it. There's no point in using it when these heads could spawn in with something that I actually want to put block buffs on. In fact, I've got an example of it right here, which is, we already talked about which head to hit. So again, Newt's an enemy max HP damage dealer, so he wants to hit heads with the most health, which is Suffering. Suffering. Suffering has the highest health. I think it might be Wrath after that. Mischief is squishy. Blight is squishy. Torment is kind of in the middle, and so is Decay. So you know, ideally you want to hit Wrath or Suffering with Newt's A3, because that'll do the most damage, and by doing the most damage, you're getting the most out of your skill, but also that's going to do more splash damage to everyone else if you've got Hex, which I hope you have. So let's go just forward a little bit here to a good example, and again, this is situational awareness. My block buffs champ only works when the enemy has no buffs, and right here we have an example of 1, 2, 3 heads all with a buff, and there is nothing I can do about that. So if I use Uko's A2, it's going to put block buffs on 1 head, which is not very useful. Now, this one's got, the head of Wrath here has a high turn meter, and it's got a buff that's on a 1 turn, so it's just about to drop off. There's nothing I can do about the head of Blight here having his buff when he spawns in to take less damage. Obviously, don't put your Newt into somebody who's got that buff, because they're going to take less damage. But I know that I'm pretty sure that Newt's got his A3 coming up, so I'm hoping that actually I can get this shield down before Uko's next turn. And that's what I'm banking on here. So I think about it, and I decide to hold it, because I can see I'm only going to get block buffs on 1, which isn't very valuable. So I hold it, planning to try and get this shield destroyed before. So this is where I'm now pushing everybody's damage into that head to try and get that shield down before Uko's next turn. And there we go. The new A3 brings that shield down, and then we would, if we didn't get an unlucky resist or a weak hit. Is it a weak hit? Yeah, weak hit. You see, so we got block buffs here and here, where we wouldn't have before, and we would have got it here, but we got a weak hit, which is just unlucky affinity issues. So, but yeah, where if I'd used that skill before, it would have been kind of wasted. I would have got 1. So, let's have a look. Only a couple more things to go through, which I thought were good examples in this run, which is it? It should be about here. Which is sometimes just hold your skills. If you've got a big, like I can see here, okay, this is Newt. He's got his A1 is a single target, his A2 is an AoE, and his A3 is a single target. Now, the big money is on the A3, obviously, that's the skill we want. It's the same with like a Geomancer on his burn. Now, I don't, a Head of Torment's out here and I've got no way to deal with it. I don't want him to get feared and then to get feared on his A3. So what I do here is, instead of using the A2, which I can use because Head of Mischief isn't out, I opt to use the A1 so that on his next turn he won't have fear. He won't have the fear debuff. And that's one to do with Geomancer as well, is you can do the same thing with Geo on his A2. Yeah, his A1 is an AoE, and so, you know, don't use his A1. When you're playing it manual, you can plan to use the single target skill to make sure he doesn't take a fear, so that when his HP burn comes up, then you can place that knowing that you've not missed and then got to wait for that cooldown to come back around. Oh, sorry, I just realised that this isn't quite full. There we go. Apologies. You've had double logos the whole video. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this run, or the interesting bits in this run of examples of things I wanted to show. The other one is hold your abilities. And here we go. So if Head's about to spawn, and this is where, you know, manual versus auto, here we've got a Head about to spawn in. There's no real reason for me to use the provoke here. Sorry, I don't know, the image has gone really weird there. There's no real reason for me to use the provoke there. It's not going to gain me a lot. But this Head might spawn in as the Head of Decay, and I want to have that provoke available if it does. So what I do is I hold the provoke just in case this Head spawns in. You can guarantee, if you use your provoke when there's a decapitated Head, you can guarantee that Decay is going to be the one that pops out of there. Yeah. And then the other thing that I would say, if we go forward a little bit more to about, what was it? Yeah, about here, is keep track of abilities. Yeah, so here we just got our Newt, one of our main damage dealers, devoured. Sorry, I went back a tiny bit too far. So Newt's the one that's going to get devoured in 2 turns. You can see that it's going to be Torment, and then it's going to be Suffering. So we know that we're going to get devoured by Suffering. The problem is that Suffering's got his A3 up, so that means that, you know, this far into the fight, 140 turns, the Devour timer is 2. So the reality is, when he gets a full turn meter here, and then he gets his extra turn because of his A3, our Newt's gone, and he's consumed. So, you know, always prioritise getting people out when they're devoured, because that way you're staying in control of the fight. When somebody gets devoured, your whole team will start to fall apart. You can live without one person, but it's way more difficult, let's say, that one of your damage dealers or your Nekmothar, your speed champ, yeah, you're going to have a much rougher time, and you're much more likely for your run to fail earlier than you'd like if you've had someone devoured. So prioritize getting them out, but, you know, Suffering, again, when he's got that A3 available, again, it's that situational awareness, knowing where your skills are and where the enemy skills are. So, you know, here, again, we got no drop defense. You know, why this run falls apart is our Mithrala gets devoured and our Hex has fallen off, and we just get unlucky with the RNG of where the mischief redirects us, and that's it. It's really simple. And, you know, at that point, the team sort of falls apart. But, you know, we're a long ways in. 150 turns is way further than I thought this team would get to. That's kind of it for what I wanted to show. So let's skip to the end. How did we do? We've obviously already one-keyed Brutal, which is great. Unfortunately, you know, I'm in one of our mini clans in the cluster with my free-to-play account, sort of one of those, you know, where we've got people coming up and mid-game people. So our focus isn't Brutal, so I don't save this key. Our focus is hard, and so we're helping to, you know, get that down so everyone can get their Mithralas in that clan. But yeah, like, we get the one key, so obviously prioritize champ releases, focus, you can focus heads, yeah, so focus the squishier heads, focus the ones you want to kill, the ones that are going to be problematic. If you don't have a Mischief tank, but you've got Hex, then hard focus the Mischief and get it down as quick as you can. Mischief is a really squishy head, so, you know, if you can get it down, if you've got Hex and you can target it, then do. Okay guys, I've been talking for a while. We had a great run. I was really happy with that run on Brutal. I would have been happier if I'd not recorded it on Hard the first time that I did it and just wasted, you know, half an hour of my life. But yeah, again, I'm not trying to showcase my team or my builds particularly. I'm looking at, okay, evaluate your team, you know, look at what could I improve, what am I missing, what do I need to be aware of when I'm running this team manually. You know, and you'll find out over time as you get more gear, as you sub a champ in or out, as you pull different champs, you'll find, okay, can I now run it on auto? And, you know, like we got 52 million there. Can I auto it 30 million? You know, with some gear upgrades, you know, that's the kind of next steps from here, and you know, where you need to play that through yourselves. Anyway, guys, I hope that's useful. So that's sort of, you know, looking at, am I ready to progress, and how do I do that, and things to watch out for, and also how to run it in auto, in manual, and the types of things that are good to look for. Guys, like and subscribe the video, and I think you're going to be. I think stick around this week because there's going to be some surprises on the channel, and yeah, I'll leave it there. It's going to be a good week for the channel. So thank you all, and I'll catch you in the next one.